no one can use a sneeze as a power alpha move like Tommy Scoops himself in the Asbury Park kit, rocking and rolling here on Soccer Wise. David Goss and Tom with you for another great show. Our first of the week, Tom. I mean, I already did a whole long thing yesterday to Jordan about how much she missed me. She was away for 2 weeks. But
she's always away. What are you talking about? She lives away.
I know. She does live away.
Non-stop.
She does live away. But, Tom, we missed our show on Monday. You did the special with the kickback committee on Tuesday, which I was not a part of, which I was very sad about. I listened to it, and I appreciate that most of the things I was going to say were said. Like, as the show's happening, I'm like, this is what I would respond with. And then someone said it, including Doyle mentioning getting punched in the face, which was going to be my exact feedback for that moment.
Yeah, I think that was perfect when he was and he starts like smiling. He was just like, been punched in the face a couple times before, and then like immediately being like, yeah, and it was almost always my fault.
And then you talked about studying abroad, and I was punched in the face while studying abroad. So it would have been a pretty good ad, so I can bring that to the table now a little more. But
what happened at Oxford? Obviously, because of intellectual David Goss. Yeah. I thought that are you using the term punched in a literal sense, or are you using it in like, you know, they debated me with words, and it was like a slapping of words?
I got beat up by a large group of people, and I was a small group of people, aka myself. Yeah.
Is this a story you want to tell?
Not really. We can do it another time in more detail. It lives somewhere
get to the
on
Oxford
Facebook,
episode.
Probably, you know, all the way back in the day when that was the way I still functioned and operated with people. But let's just say my parents were unimpressed by what I had learned. And the British people were unimpressed by me as well, as were the South Dakotans. I was in South Dakota this week. Huge shout out to our Discord. I got a ton of recommendations of like what to do and where to go in South Dakota, which was not something I expected, including being sent to get arguably the best sourdough bread I've ever had. I brought it back to Miami and then did that thing where it's like, oh, I'll have a piece of bread for breakfast. And I've just been eating pieces of bread for like the last 2 days.
Delightful.
Yeah.
That sounds perfect, honestly.
So,
I love that move.
Yeah. So shout out to the Soccer Wise community, the kickback community. You're all unbelievable. We have fans in South Dakota, and then people who have visited as well. I wasn't fully aware of the location of where I was, hence I kept being like, there's a lot of Nebraska fans here, and then looked at a map and was like, oh, I'm like right here, which I'm a huge Omaha fan. I wasn't near Omaha, otherwise that's where I would have gone. So yeah. Tom, we have USMNT to talk about. Christian Roldan has been added to the team, and then we are going to start our playoff conversations and our offseason conversations because we have 2 teams that have already been eliminated, and we have a team that has already clinched their spot in the postseason, which starts like, I don't know, in a month and a half. So we're not that close. But
and then the second round starts in 4 months.
In 2027, when the semifinals against the Liga MX relegated squad begins, that is when we're really going to hit our form. So we've got a lot to talk about and a lot to do. Shout out to everyone who's live with us in the chat, except for Matt Doyle, who is being a troll as usual. I believe Doyle said that he was going to an Argentine grill house for the Argentina World Cup qualifier coming up later today. So I look forward to photos and pictures of the carafe of red wine and the just full table of meats that we'll be seeing in front of him coming up in a little bit. Before we dig into all of our stuff for today's show, I was not here to talk about the Leagues Cup. We do not have to go into depth on the Leagues Cup final. Hot take, don't like it when people spit on people. So I thought that needs to be mentioned. But more importantly, I didn't get to watch the game live, so I rewatched the game. It was cool that the Seattle Sounders sold out their stadium and made it feel big and won a game mainly on a group built through the draft, built through their pipeline, their academy, and the Tacoma Defiance and everything they've done. Like there is a real factor that the Seattle Sounders have high expectations for themselves, and people elevate to that. Everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people who join that club elevate their game or are factors in winning soccer. And I think a lot of that just comes from the atmosphere around the team that they believe they should be that. And, we talked about and complained a bit about the lack of spending going into the Club World Cup to like really compete. But when they're on the field, the players who are there are going to compete because that's like their innate DNA, and they consistently are able to bring in players to do that. And I was, kind of excited for the like Paul Arriola as a non-DP, Jesus for like all of that, because I thought those guys would then fit into that, and they've had injuries, and it hasn't been the exact roster we would like to see. But at the same time, very few clubs could still accomplish something with the amount of injuries they've had. And so you watch that game, and you watch the way Reed Baker-Whiting played, the way that Obed Vargas, of course, played.
Oh, my God.
And the entire experience around that. But Paul Rothrock, Alex Roldan. Like, we cannot step away from the fact that Alex Roldan was a late college addition as a 10 that they converted to a right back. Now they have him taking PKs against Inter Miami to win the game. He has the assist. Like, he has become a lockdown player for them, and they're doing it again with 4 or 5 more players. I did an interview with Sasha Sarofsky and Brian Weiss, Georgetown head coach and Maryland head coach, about the future of college soccer, which we're going to be putting out in a little bit. But like Paul Rothrock was like a Georgetown guy, and then it's like, oh, I don't know if he has a pro future. TFC gave up on him, and now he's doing what he's doing in this moment. It's all pretty cool.
I agree, and again, forgive me if I said this on Kickback Committee. I've been talking so many times into microphones, I forget where I said what. But Brian Schmetzer deserves so much credit for everything, but and we gave him all of the flowers, but I'm remiss if I didn't mention that it used to be a criticism that he didn't develop players. And like criticism in like quotations, because if you're winning everything all of the time, guess what? It's okay, right? Like, you don't have to be the best at everything always. He's done that, particularly over the last few years. You going back to Obed Vargas being trusted to be subbed in the CONCACAF Champions Cup final at 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And again, maybe like at that point it was like, oh, is this kid just so special that literally any coach would play him? Maybe. Well, then you go on down the list, all of those guys that you just mentioned, very, very important. And one more point that I definitely didn't say, and I definitely didn't hammer home enough, I suppose. They've done this Leagues Cup final, like the end of the Leagues Cup, they've been without Jordan Morris essentially all of the season. That's a designated player, for those who forget. Albert Rusnak for several weeks, that's a designated player. He was their best player last year and had been their best player this year. And without Ryan Kent, who was a key early season signing.
Because to replace Paul Arriola, who was on a DP contract on his previous team.
Most other teams, 2 of those 3, it's like, yep, can't blame you. You didn't win. Yeah. Like, I'm sure, I feel like I said on the show when they advanced, like, if all 3 of those guys aren't back, they're not going to win this tournament. Well, I was wrong. And it was just, I don't know, man. Like, what a moment. What an atmosphere. The fans were equally as impressive, I think. And, you just can't say enough good things about the Seattle Sounders winning the Leagues Cup.
And I would add on the young player, I thought Kosa Rienzi and Danny Leyva, when they came off the bench around the 60th minute, helped stem the tide, which was Miami in an ascendancy to start that second half. Allende should have scored. It's kind of one of the sad parts about the whole experience, which was Suarez was really good in this game. Like Messi, I don't know what happened. Messi like walked off to the side of the field and decided he didn't want to be a part of this game. And like, you can give Seattle credit for that and they deserve it, but it just was odd to see. And Suarez was up for it. So that would have been a conversation coming out of the game, except then he decided to fight kids and spit on staff and do other things which are going to overshadow that. And I don't know. We still don't have word. Everyone, I'm sure, wants to know. We are waiting on Leagues Cup for them to dole out their punishment. And then if anything were to happen from an MLS point of view after that, that would only come after the Leagues Cup. And so we are still waiting on Leagues Cup. Now, their punishments will only affect their competition, which is obviously over. And the expectation, I think, for a lot of people is Busquets probably won't play again for Inter Miami, and Suarez probably won't either. So that part won't really matter. And then it will be like, what does MLS do after that, which has been discussed a million times by you in a million places and everyone else. So we don't have to dig into that. But I thought then those 2 substitutions helps them the tide. And again, Danny Leyva, obviously a guy I've talked about a million times, unreal at the GA Cup, youth player, all that stuff, has struggled to find his feet at the pro ranks. There are not a lot of MLS clubs that would still have him around and still be finding ways to push him into the team. And I thought he really helped them. and help them get over the line. And then obviously Georgie Manungu, right? Another example of a Tacoma Defiance player they've pushed in, draws the penalty kick within minutes of coming on the field, helps them stretch the field, helps them sort of open things up and seal the deal against this team. So it's been really impressive to watch them. I think for everyone, right, this was sort of the like polar opposites almost in MLS of like Inter Miami and who they are and their identity and the way they've been built, and Seattle on the other side. And I would love for us to elevate and promote the stuff that Seattle is and other teams are a little bit more in Major League Soccer. Let's talk about our MLS teams before we dig into the USMNT. And let's start with the Philadelphia Union. They are the first team to officially clinch their spot in the postseason. They currently sit, of course, as the leader in the Supporters Shield race as well. They had qualified for the postseason 7 straight years from 2017 through 2023 before missing out in 2024. I just want to give a little bit of the night and day that we're seeing now over the last 2 years. Last season, 2024, they finished 12th on 37 points. This year, right now, without the season even being over, with 5 games left to play, they are currently first place on 57 points. So already a 20-point increase. You go back and look at last year, how much has changed. 5 of the top 11 of their minutes leaders are gone. Daniel Gazdog, Jack Elliott, Jack McGlynn, the big ones, Leon Flock, and then Semmel, of course, was the fill-in for Andre Blake. And then the big one is that Jim Curtin was let go in November, 2-time MLS Coach of the Year, 11 years as the head coach of the team, 14 years with the club, had won a Shield and been to an MLS Cup final, 3 Open Cup finals, 2 CCL semifinals, and those 7 straight postseasons. That was last November. Then on January 2nd, they hired Bradley Carnell, and now the players they have leaned on, the new ones, Lukic, Jean-Jacques, who's increased his minutes by at least 1,500 this year, Damiani, Indy Vasilev, Frankie Westfield, and then Andrew Rick has come in and doubled his minutes as the backup and fill-in for Andre Blake, and all of that under a new regime in Bradley Carnell. It's not the biggest turnaround we've ever seen in MLS history, Tom, but it is up there, and it is one of the more impressive jobs we have seen in this league.
Yeah, just one thing to clean up. They're the only team in the East to clinch the playoffs, technically, mathematically. In the West, San Diego and Minnesota have. But again, it's still impressive for all 3 of these teams, and we're choosing to focus on Philly today because I think we've given plenty of deserved love to San Diego.
We're gonna love San Diego a little more later in the show because they're
again and
but mainly it's because I didn't even know those 2 teams clinched. That's why
you're a big man for admitting that. I was trying to smooth that over for you. And Minnesota has a huge week coming up after the international break. They play San Diego and then they play host the semifinal, the Open Cup. Anyway, I digress. Yes, this was an absolute huge turnaround, and this was an extremely unpopular decision by sporting director Ernst Tanner. Like it comes down to him in the front office for his decision. It was contentious. Like, listen, the relationship broke down between him and Jim Curtin at some point, maybe early last year, maybe a little bit before that. They weren't speaking all that much by the end of the season, and then not just there, but like Jim Curtin's exit wasn't handled perfectly, right? So both things can be true. That I still feel for that, and I still think that Jim Curtin is one of the best coaches in this country. And it's the other part of this is Philly had a clear vision. Ernst Tanner has had a clear vision since he got here, and Bradley Carnell fit that. Bradley Carnell was at a point where being surprisingly let go by St. Louis. It was a perfect marriage between front office and head coach playing philosophies and understanding that this was the job and this is how we're going to play. We see the game the same way. And guess what? We might lose somebody like Daniel Gazdog a month and a half into the season, and you're just going to have to deal with it, right? So it's been extraordinarily impressive on all fronts. This is a team that I was, all my preseason analysis, listen, like I thought they were going to be playoff, like I thought that they were going to be top 7 in the East. You can check this, maybe don't check it because there's a lot of bad things there, including Atlanta probably ahead of them. I digress. My whole point was not to pat myself on the back. My point was to say, I felt good about them being solid, not great. Solid and maybe not even very good. Like, hey, they're going to be a first-round exit type of team, but it's going to be a really good building block season. Guess what? They are great. But my analysis was built on, you're going to look at their underlying numbers at the end of the season, and it's going to be a gegenpressing Red Bull soccer style. They are first in MLS in passes per defensive action. They are 7th in direct attacks, 4th in attack speed, 2nd in shots, 4th in field tilt. That's all that this team wants to be. And I wish that I had ground covering metrics because I bet that they're up there in all of them. But Sport Tech does not do that. For some reason, MLS does not use Opta anymore. I digress on that. But Philadelphia it worked out stylistically.
Everyone can catch a stray right now. Keep your heads down.
It's just a joke. But like, so this team, the resiliency and the dead-eyed philosophy, and this is how we want to play, and this is the number we have for all of these players. And Daniel Guy's like, yeah, maybe you deserve a new contract. We think it's more. We're not going to hold you back. You can go to Columbus, right? And then Indiana Vasiljev, we already got him in. Quinn Sullivan's going to hit a new level. I'm sure Ty Baribo's going to leave at some point in the next couple windows because he's played himself into a new contract. Their ability to continually, not just one, like where everything comes right for one group, to hit on a number of guys that are surpassing their value. They've done this 3 or 4 iterations now, and now over a second coaching staff. It is one of the most impressive long-term builds in MLS.
Yeah. They have done it in a couple different ways, right? They've unearthed players coming in, and then they've used their own academy and pushed players through, and that is a big core of why there's belief that they could flip rosters and continue forward because there's some level of identity that already exists there, as well as talent. Quinn Sullivan started this year unbelievably, carried them through the opening stretch of the season, which I think allowed Carnell to settle in and get buy-in from these players. And I think if Quinn Sullivan's not ready to do that and not capable of that, like, this is a totally different season. And then since then, they've added the Indy Vasiljevs of the world, now Milan Olaski coming in, Damiani, and those players have been able to sort of carry them in moments when they've needed it. But overall, the cohesive style, the cohesive vision, and the energy that they play with has allowed them to be one of the best teams, as well as, by the way, Andre Blake being a little bit healthier. He has not been fully healthy.
Yes, that was the biggest issue last year.
Yeah, he's going to play about 1,000 more minutes this year than he did last year, and they have gone from the 17th worst defensive team in the league to a top 5. And that's going to be a big part of it because he's the best goalkeeper. And Andrew Rick's been awesome as well, a player that they've believed in a lot coming through the academy and now getting opportunities. Frankie Westfield has stepped on the field and gotten a ton more minutes for them as well. So I think you see them continuing to try and push the next generation of players. And there's a lot to be excited about with this Philadelphia team. Can they win trophies? Like, that's going to be another conversation, right? There is the debate about what's the ceiling on all of this. If you don't spend at that high number and you don't get that match winner that some other teams have, a Son and a Vander, players like that in that final moment. And we're going to see it now under Bradley Carnell if it's any different. Obviously, St. Louis came up short in the postseason. That was an expansion year and maybe didn't have different expectations as they went into that series against SKC, but there'll still be question marks going forward. But they're the leaders right now for the Supporters Shield. They have a legitimate shot at winning this thing. It would be a massive trophy for them. The 2021 Shield, obviously the biggest thing they've ever won. 2020, a weird year. Didn't get the full season. Didn't get the full home and away, all that stuff. Celebrate the way they'd like to. And so it would be a huge deal for this club if they're able to do this.
Exactly, and you look at what they have left. So again, they're 1 point ahead of San Diego. Going to Cincy and beating Cincy was a huge result.
Playing down a man for 3 minutes as well.
Doyle wrote about this in his column, which again you should be reading every single week. He laid out the numbers of I had kind of alluded to this earlier, but he ran the exact numbers, and they were even kind of more divergent than I thought. Of after they beat Cincy in like March, they maybe had one win against, the other top 7 teams. Mm-hmm. They were beating the teams they're supposed to beat and not beating the really good teams. And then they go to Cincy and win that game. I thought not just the 3 points in the Shield race, though obviously that is extremely important. It was making a statement, right? And now in their last 5 games, they play 3 teams that are above the playoff line. 2 of those games, it's at Vancouver in their next match, at Charlotte in their last game of the season. If they get 4 points out of those 2, you feel pretty good about them getting the Shield. And that is a very, very difficult task, particularly going cross-country against Vancouver right now. And we'll see what kind of form. Charlotte is I believe that they would tie the record if they win their next game for most consecutive wins. Regardless, they are the hottest team, possibly in MLS history. And we'll see exactly where they are on decision day. But it's not an easy run. And this is what you do if you want to win trophies. And the fact that they're in this position is a ginormous win.
And they are also in the Open Cup semifinal. You mentioned it for Minnesota. They are traveling to Nashville for that game. That's going to be an awesome game. Villanova alum BJ Callahan on the other side, a chance for both those clubs to win their first ever Open Cup trophy. So like that's going to be a big one, which I think maybe makes it a little harder. It takes away a little. How much energy do you have? All of that. Jose Nunez in the chat, who covers the Philadelphia Union as well as anyone, talking about, covering for Ian Glavinovich, who went down with the knee injury in preseason. Makanya has been a huge part of that. They are very thin at center back. They are very thin in general in a lot of these spots. So now they have to cover for a red card to Makanya this week or coming up next week after the international break, and then go into an Open Cup semifinal and then come out of it and continue to try and put up points at the top of this race. But either way, it is a huge year for them, a massive turnaround. And I think for Philadelphia, no question already, it was best case scenario. Like this is as well as you could ask for. And as you said, not a ton of expectations about this going into it.
They have 18 different goal scorers this season. 18 just in MLS play. And I don't know if there was a random goal from somebody else. Regardless, that is a huge, huge number. There is one player that scored more than 5 goals, and that's Ty Baribo. Like this is as even a team. This is everything that this club wants to be.
I don't know what Ty Baribo's celebration is, but I just did it for anyone who's watching and anyone who's not. You missed out, and you had the opportunity. On that, by the way, the goal against Cincinnati, a bizarre goal. Damiani, rolls Miazga on a ball up in the air. Like, he rolls over him, around him, and then flicks the header to the far post. It was a bizarre, way to see it go down, but it was a huge goal for them. On the top of things, as we said, San Diego has also clinched their spot in the postseason. I think Andres Dreyer has clinched his spot as MVP of the 2025 MLS season. There you go.
He's from Denmark.
the pure respect from me for that. The goal against LAFC is one of the best moments you're going to have. The game's against them a little bit right then. You're on the road in an intense atmosphere. It's Son's debut, all of the energy for LAFC, and he is a one-man counterattack, shows the poise, shows the composure, destroys the first defender, dekes the second defender, and then has enough power on the shot to get it off the deflection and in the back of the goal. And it's just, he's done stuff like this all season. He is second in the league in ground covered. He has been a minute sponge for them. He has been a creator. He has been a finisher. And wherever they finish in the Western Conference, this is a historic season for an expansion team, and he's the center of all of it.
2 notes here. First of all, I'd like us to normalize deke in soccer analysis, and I appreciate that. I like that a lot. I'm not being sarcastic. 2, you just let me go on a diatribe about, ground covering and making fun of Sport Tech, and then you're just like, well, actually, he's second in the league in ground. Where did you pull that out of?
I think Dunny said it during the broadcast.
You're just charting the high intensity.
Yeah. I do my own research. I'm based out of Florida. I like to do my own research so that I know what's going on.
Listen, the last 4 games, he's got 3 goals and 2 assists. And again, you could take any 4-game sample size essentially from the season in regular season play. Those are pretty much the numbers. So it's not just that he'll go on a heater for 3 games and then disappear for 5. He's started all 29 games, which is important for me in again a regular season award in a seasonal. Last year, part of the argument with Messi, which again, and I voted Messi, it was the right pick, but part of the argument was his per 90. I was like, dude, I don't give a shit about per 90. Per 90 is sweet, not in an MVP race. It matters that you're available for every game. This team needs him. And the fact that he's able to play all of these games is a testament to him, testament to the training staff and everything else. And, it takes a little bit of luck too, but him being a workhorse is part of his MVP resume. He leads the league in goal contributions at 32 with 14 goals, 18 assists. It's been an impeccable season. And again, for me, he's in pole position. Messi hasn't played in MLS that much in regular season recently because of the Leagues Cup, and he had an injury prior to that. They do have 4 games in hand. We'll see what happens. Again, going into the final day last year, I had Cucho Hernandez number 1 on my ballot. Messi had 4 goal contributions, and they set the points record. So things will go down to the last day because the last day should matter if it is this close. But right now, Dreyer has been in pole position on my ballot for months now. And again, it's not because that there's no other options. It's because he's stayed consistently excellent and productive and been whatever San Diego needs. And he's settled in to more of a consistent role within this group. But again, I was saying earlier all season that what I loved most in the first half of the season, he could be your inside forward, playing off the shoulder when you needed goals. He could be tucking in as a 10 when you needed to create. He could drop in and help with the build-up if he needed to, and it just showed the wide range of both technical skill, work rate, and then third, like the intelligence to fill all of those roles. So I can't say enough good things about what Anders Dreyer has done this season. And again, he's going to win New Cover of the Year. And he's pole position for MVP with 5 games left.
And, he carried them at times when Chucky Lozano has been out. The back line for them, like, it's been fantastic, but they've been playing draft picks and kids and moving players around, and they've continued to put up performances. So I think when you talk about on-field, off-field, intangibles, all that type of stuff, leadership, like, he has been a massive part of all of that. And this team's awesome. Like, they're fun to watch. Uh-huh. Pedro Somo comes off the bench. He's trying to play through the lines as LAFC is charging down their throat and putting pressure on them. Pilcher comes in once again off the bench. He's able to hold things down, being pressured by Bouanga and Son. Like, they got a little fortunate in this game. LAFC should have scored. They should have scored from Bouanga twice at least. And I thought it was interesting that Son was kind of laying into our guy, the referee, after the game. I didn't know that was a part of Son's vibes.
Me neither.
Because he's so friendly. I talked to a couple Tottenham fans, and they were like, no, it's not like uncommon for him, but he doesn't normally like lose it. I was like, okay, I just wanted to see if MLS refereeing already broke him or if he was there before that. And so there was a lot going on in this game. All of it was an example of what this San Diego team's capable of, the ethos that they have, the way they play. And this game was fun. Like, it was open. It was fun. LAFC has games like this when the other team is also open and trying to push the game and create space for them. There's still question marks in their central midfield. Eddie Segura stepping into that role for this one. Part of the carnage that occurred on that second goal for Dreyer, one of the players that he took out of the play 1v1 by himself. But yeah, there's a lot to like about the San Diego team, and they're going to be fun to watch down the stretch. And we will continue to cover all the teams as they clinch their spot in the postseason. Of course, we'll be covering that as well. But on the flip side, we got to talk about the teams who are dead and buried and what it means for their future and what's happening. Now, at the start of this, it is going to be probably a different tone than it gets as time goes along. Yeah. Let's just say we've got Montreal and DC to hit. I think there are 5, maybe 7 teams that are going to sound similar on the bottom of things, and then a chunk of teams in the middle that will feel a little bit different. And then after that, you'll start to get into teams that get eliminated in the postseason. We are going to start with CF Montreal because I don't know, they're higher in the standings, and congratulations to them who are officially eliminated. Here's just like a quick rundown, and then we're going to hit a couple questions about all of these teams every time we do this. But for Montreal, they fired Laurent Courtois on March 24th and promoted Marco Donadel. They have the worst defense in the East and 4th worst in the league on expected goals against. They are tied for the 2nd worst attack in the Eastern Conference on XG and in the league. So that's 1.69 goal chances created per 90, which is 4th worst. And the gap between 4th and 5th is pretty large. And then the gap between 5th and the rest of the league is even bigger. And they are 3rd worst for live ball chances created. AKA, they are boring. They don't really create chances. They haven't been super successful. And then off the field, it has been a tough year for them. They just had one of the members of their sporting structure, Corey Ray, leave the club, on top of them firing a coach and hiring a new coach. And then on the player side, they've traded Joel Waterman. They've sold George Campbell. They've sold Nathan Saliba. They basically let Jules Anthony Vilsaint walk away. And then they got a cash for Caden Clark.
Hold on, worse than letting Jules Anthony Vilsaint walk away. Like, they paid him to go away. I'm sorry, we'll get into that in a minute, but...
So I would say, if you ask me in a vacuum, who are the 5 players you build around? Who has you most excited? 4 of them are on that list that have left the club. And I would argue at least 2 of them did so under market value. I think selling George Campbell, fine. It's part of your process. And Nathan Saliba was clearly ready for the next level. If you can get the right move with the right sell on. And Caden Clark, they did great business on. But it has not been ideal. On the flip side, they've already brought some pieces in, so we have to mention this as we do our offseason conversation. Efrain Morales is sort of the George Campbell replacement as the next one. Matty Longstaff, Bodie Hidalgo, and Ivan Jaime have been brought in as well. Tom, the questions we were going to do is, what do you believe in most? What is your biggest worry? And what would you say excites you about this team going forward? Do you want to put a bow on 2025 before we get there?
Yeah, I mean, listen. You tell me. Do you want to start with the criticisms and the reality, or start with the optimism, positivity? Like, what do you like over? Which way do you want to go?
In general, I like to think that I'm an optimistic sports person.
You are.
I like sports.
Despite being a Jets and Mets fan, by the way.
Exactly. I find it
Against the
really
odds.
hard. And a Jets fan who lost AVT the day before the season started, because that's what we do best. I find it really hard with these two teams, and I feel like we're going to be faking it, and I don't know that we should open up.
Yeah, okay.
Faking. So let's just do what we're going to do.
Yeah, okay. Let's start. It's your point on, and again, like, they should be celebrated with the Saliba, George Campbell, like, that's all good stuff, but your point about these are the players you want to build around, even when they do, like, let's talk about George Campbell. Great trade. What has happened since they got George Campbell into selling George Campbell? Caden Clark, great trade. What has happened in the year since they acquired him until now when they flip him again? And you're going down the list where it's like, yeah, it was a lot cooler when it was the Wilfred Nancy-led teams and they finished in third or whatever it was that season, and then George Mihailovic and Alistair Johnston and come on, man, all these guys go. Ismail Kone. That is what you want. That is the gold standard. Well, when you're doing it, when it's just like, oh, cool, we made $700,000 on Caden Clark. All right, how many games did you win? Or like, what of consequence happened? And there isn't really much. So, listen, I disagreed with Laurent Courtois firing at the time. Nothing under Marco Donadel has really changed my opinion on that. And I don't even necessarily, I don't know what he could be expected to do, right? Like, it keeps on coming down to what is relative to expectation. And I don't know how you could look at this team. And again, like, it wasn't the deepest and most difficult thing to figure out, but we clocked this in preseason. It was just like throw a bunch of I don't know, 15 different guys who weren't really big time additions. Throw all of them at the wall and see what sticks. Prince Owusu stuck. Cool. Like, that's good. That's a good start. And then what, right? Like, so I struggle looking back at 25 for this team for this season and think about, was it let's say with Toronto. Toronto has had a good season, but I'm going to be much more optimistic about them when we talk about them because you can see the building blocks in place. Is Marco Donadel the coach? I don't know. I assume so, but I don't know. You thought that the front office had some stability, and maybe it does now because there's been change there. There's been several starters that come and go. Thomas Gillier, he's looked really, really good. Is he going to be gone immediately like Louis Binks was back in like... anytime I'm starting to get excited about something, and again, I do have a couple positives I want to get to, like Ivan Jaime. That's a real DP if they trigger the purchase option next summer. Like, that's a great, whether or not he works, like, if they put the investment in and keep him, if he shows that he's worthy to be kept, that is one big question that has been eluding them since like 2019. So that's a step in the right direction, right? But like, I'm struggling to have a whole lot of realistic optimism. To like, there are teams where we'll talk about blind trust on either acquisitions, or I'm going to go ahead and assume that's going to work out well because all these other moves worked out well.
Yeah.
You can't really say it here because, again, even when it does, it's like Caden Clark's gone in a year.
Yeah. No, there's none of that. And I think that's the part that's really, really hard is the Laurent Courtois, Marco Donadel conversation. It's about process. What was the process? They start the year, 5 games on the road, 8 games on the road, and then Laurent Courtois doesn't get results out of something. There was never, and even after he was fired, listen, this is the line we set of like, this is what we have to accomplish in this stretch. So you have a setup where you can't play home games and you don't really know what the expectations are. And then you fire someone off the back of that because they don't perform in a space you don't really expect them to perform. Is Marco Donadel going to be fired next year if they start the first 8 games winless because you play the first 8 games on the road? And I think that's the part about this club that's really, really hard. And like, you can have a process around acquiring players and selling them and leaning on young players. And, there was injuries. Jalen Neal, I think, really unfortunate. Like, the injury is not fully available. Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, they took a shot and it didn't really work out for them. And like, that's going to happen. when you lean into this side of the game, because these are unproven players who, for the most part, are going to fail. Like, the percentages are against you in this. But to do it and just have like no vision of we're going to win one day, or we're going to try and win, or we have some idea of how we're going to do it. They took a shot on Veroni. It didn't work out. Again, I don't mind that. Like, I understand the point. But on Ivan Jaime, if he plays well, there is no belief that they're going to be able to set up a deal for him to come back. Unless he says, yeah, I'll take nothing to come back because I'm happy and I'm comfortable and I want to be there. There's just like no belief that this is a club that's going to be able to do that. And so I think all of that is really, really unfortunate. I mean, this is like an insane thing probably to say, which it shouldn't be, which is Georgi Mihailovic moved inside the league to a Canadian team for big money. Montreal could never be in that conversation. But this is a guy who played his best soccer of his career at Montreal. And the fact that they could never be in that conversation shows you where the team sits. And if you're not going to spend well, have good process. And having your sons run the team is not good process. And that, all of it together, makes it really hard to have a lot of belief in anything for 2026.
They have had 8 managers since, the middle of 2017. 8. Like, you talk about process, you talk about what can you build.
Aren't you supposed to get new batteries every year in your smoke detector? Isn't that the rule?
It was Mauro Biello, Remy Gard, Wilmer Cabrera, Thierry Henry, Wilfred Nancy, Hernan Losada, Courtois, and now Donadel. And will there be a 9th in the winter? I don't know, right? Like, it's and again, so again, you're right. Like, I'm not really killing them that like Giacomo Veroni didn't work. Like the one like. That's fine. You throw some darts, right? But if your entire plan is we're going to throw 15 darts, and again, even if 3 of them hit, like,
then we're going to get rid of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Like again, like you need to have controls, whether that's a head coach or a structure or a handful of players that like, hey, like Joel Waterman, like he's not a perfect center back. That's a guy. That's a starting MLS center back.
I have no idea what the thinking is internally that they don't think Joel Waterman should be a part of the team. Like long term. And that, again, can be a situation where that's the player saying, like, I don't really want to be here. But he's under contract, and the fact that he doesn't want to be there is the problem.
Yeah, and like, I feel like we've piled on enough, or at least I've. Do you have any further points on the negative side? Because I feel like I'm repeating that. But like, I want to close this on a few positive things to look forward to.
No, I think the biggest worry is the club and who they are and their entire identity. And the threshold, that will be something that we won't always say, but I just say in general, like the ownership in the group that runs the team and all of that is the biggest worry. And that is probably most of it.
Yeah. So again, on the positive side, again, Prince Owusu has been really, really good. That signing has worked out excellently, and hopefully he's able to stay because that is a constant, right? Dante Sealy has been a revelation for this team. Again, Ivan Jaime, like if he works out and they keep him, like that's one of the big critiques I've had about this team for years. Like that would be progress. That would be very, very good. Jaylen Neal, I still think is a long-term building block. I know he struggled with injuries this year, and I already talked about Thomas Gillier. Really, really good. And again, if they have him for 2 years, like that's a success. And you just hope that it comes at a time where you have enough other pieces around. And hey, we'll see if they like they'll spend some money on guys that they think might go to Bologna. And like, again, that sounds like a backhanded compliment. In some ways it is, but like that is better than not doing it at all because they hadn't done it at all in recent years. So again, like the Ukrainian winger, whose name escaped me, if he's somebody that does really well in
Sinchuk.
Sinchuk. If Sinchuk does really well for 2 seasons and then goes to Bologna, if Gillier does really well for 2 seasons and goes to Bologna, that's okay, as long as it's being supplemented by Jaime and Owusu and Samuel Piet, and we haven't mentioned his name yet. And like again, some of the young center backs that they've brought in, like there is reasons, and like their academy, they've been trusting young players. Part of that is being cheap, but they've trusted young players. They've done development. Those are all good things. It's just things going in too many directions. If they're able for it to all come together, then again, I try to be positive, but even when it did come together, they chased Wilfred Nancy out of town.
Yeah. On the list of players that we like, I like Victor Lotori. I think he's been pretty good for them.
Yeah, good job.
As well. But again, a lot of these are water carriers. A lot of these are, pieces, and having sort of the like vision players who can carry the whole thing forward. That's what's tough to see for this team. The best move they've probably made of the year was selling Caden Clark in a cash fair for $700,000 plus a potential another $100,000, which brings us to our next team, DC United, officially eliminated. They are the lowest in Major League Soccer in chances created from live play. They are the second worst team in the league, behind TFC in total attacking numbers. They fired Troy Lesane in the middle of the year. They hired Rene Weiler in July to move forward. And that is where DC United sits right now, Tom. So we can do this the same. What's your biggest worry about this club? And I would say ownership, the entire club, and the way it functions.
Yes. I will say that from what I've heard, the planning is not always long-term. And the resources are not always long-term, which I think helps lead to some panic signings is not the right way to put it, but let's get a deal done before our budgets change, right? There was supposed to be another DP coming this summer. That didn't happen. That was the idea, and then it wasn't the idea. Again, Rene Weiler, I hope that he does well, but I'm worried about his track record as a manager. He does not stay at jobs for super long, and this, I think, a team more than a lot of others in the league that one way you could help control for chaos above you is structure and again, Gio Savarese is somebody they did talk to Gio Savarese. I believe I've reported that. If I haven't, there's news. They made a run at Jim Curtin. I've definitely reported that, and that was serious. And that's good. That's a good process. You're doing the right things. But then I don't mean this to be such a negative of Rene Weiler before giving him a chance to prove whether it is a negative or a positive, right? But at least the process started with Jim Curtin and Gio Savarese and some other people that could give them the long-term stability that they probably need. We'll see if this manager does or doesn't. So you're right. I echo your thought, and I'd like you to elaborate on it better than I am now. But that is my, I guess, biggest worry is that it's all going to keep changing. You go from, again, Ben Olsen was here for a long time, and fans were ready for him to leave. Would you want, maybe this would be better to have asked at this time last year, but what would you do to get Ben Olsen back, right? And that's stability. Since then, it was, you change from him, and it's Rooney. And then Rooney's playing a different system. You throw a bunch of players out, and then the Benteke deal comes together. You've already traded away multiple really good crossers of the ball. Okay, we need to get more. Wayne Rooney wants Ravel Morrison on a Max Tam deal. Let's just blindly do that because we have to. And then Rooney leaves, of course. Hernan Losada comes in, completely different play style. Let's overturn the roster again. We're halfway through overturning it. We sign more bad deals that fits a new system. We fire that manager. A new manager comes in with a new style. It's just, that's the worry, that it's just going to be a complete cycle of the team trying, the front office or the playing, what ends up being the roster is trying to catch up to a coach that's already left or been fired.
I don't really have a ton of notes of how to describe it because it is what it is, but I think I was talking to someone about this team and they were saying, the Paul Pogba stuff, right? Let's go there.
There was nothing that was real to that. What the reality to that was me and you talking about it on Soccer West.
I thought it was that ownership was interested.
That maybe made a phone call.
Okay.
That was nothing that was ever serious.
But in general, you have these moments where it feels like ownership almost oversteps and they're involved because they're engaged and they care. If you want to do that, because let's be real, people who own sports teams are bad at running sports teams because that's not their profession. If you're going to do that, then the way you fix being in the way is spending a lot of money and making it okay. And they don't do either of those things. And I think that's where there feels like right now, they don't have a 2 team. They have one of the lower spending academies, even though they are in the talent-rich area. And that's the biggest part that's hard about this is yes, they brought through Mattia Kimboni, and they sold him, and they made some money, and there's some players who have come through. It has been in fits and starts. It is not part of a pipeline and a process, and that's really, really frustrating for a team in one of the soccer-rich areas. And they do so as well with the DPs, not spending to the full max that they can. And I think that now you go back into the conversation of process. And all of the things you talked about, it doesn't matter if it's Ben Olsen or Wayne Rooney or who. If the ground is shifting underneath you internally for no reason, it's going to be really hard to do your job at a high level. And that feels like the biggest problem right now for DC United, and not one that you can fix because you can't fire the owner and you can't move on the owner. And that is like where this team has been stuck. The hope was that maybe they had taken some steps over the last year and a half because of sort of moving Dave Casper, who it felt like took a lot of pressure probably off ownership, but also because he was so closely connected and linked, was sort of doing the work for them. And the hope was maybe a different person in that position would find ways to push the ownership group back and say, this is the way things are done in this league and this is what we should do. And it hasn't really felt the case so far. And as you've said, a lot of short-term builds and like short-term for a team that's not winning. So what's the value of short-term going forward? What's the value of some of these like international signings at positions of need? Like, what is David Schnegg for you going forward? And Kyle Rolls, if they're not a player you're going to sell in the future, you're not in a win now mode, and I don't really know what you're trying to put together. So it's a team that feels really far away from being competitive. I say that in the context of like, we just talked about a Philly team that went from 12th to 1st. It is possible in Major League Soccer, and it's possible for anyone in MLS because the gap is so small. But DC is now running on 10 plus years of proving that they're not going to do the work to fill that hole. And so I think that's the really frustrating part. And like, this should be the time where we go into what gets you excited. And I named 5 academy players coming out of DC, and I can't do that right now. And I think that is like the biggest blight against this team, where you're having the year you're having and you still can't turn to that and say, oh, well, at least we got this next step started.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and maybe we'll continue to see some more integration in the future. Again, maybe Rene Walla will be somebody who integrates young players. Again, I don't know that intimately his history, and so again, maybe we'll see that next year, and that would be a good way. But like, listen,
I was gonna say the brightest spot for them is, will they be out of the Matty Click contract?
They will.
So they will no longer be paying a DP who doesn't play in this league anymore.
Correct. So they could technically add 2 more DPs this winter beyond Christian Benteke. Again, whether they go, or it's one, if they go 2 DPs and 4 U22s, maybe, right? Or if they go, whatever, they're going to have.
Well, they have to leave the U22 spots open for international young goalkeepers because that's clearly a winning model.
They'll have that flexibility, and those are important roster slots. And again, I hope that the investment is there to give them the chance to do that. And I hope that this head coach gets the chance to. I hope this front office gets the chance to do that. So I think that we're going to see a lot of ins and outs this winter. I know that there was a decent amount last winter as well, but I think that there's a lot that they can move in and out of. I like the attacking foundation. Like, Christian Benteke's game is going to age well, right? He's going to remain aerial dominant. Like, look at Kai Kamara. He's still one of the most aerial. And again, Benteke does a lot more than just that, but his elite skill is going to age well, right? I don't love, but I like Caden Clark, Joao Pedro, Gabriel Pirani. Those 3 guys, I think, work better as the 3rd and 4th option. So all that is to say, if a sick DP10 comes in, or a sick DP winger, Pedro, Clark, Pirani, Shroud, they all look better because you have, like, what would... I like these players on San Diego, like Valakari. What would he look like without Anders Dreyer? What would Alex Mighton look like? Like, some of these other guys. Like, that's part of the reason why it's not just how good the player is that you sign. It's like the potential knock-on effects. Like, when you get it right, when you get the Carlos Hill, and again, maybe not another perfect example, but like that's a guy who, when he's on the field, just makes dudes around him better. And that's what's been so frustrating about New England as well, is that, like, man, like, you have this guy. You have the guy that a lot of player teams are searching for. So I look at it in that direction. Hopefully you can bring in another defensive addition, or if the structure with a preseason or a new manager. Again, obviously Aaron Herrera is one of the best right backs in the league. Those are pieces to build around. And again, I think it's going to take some surgery, but like, again, if you hit on those handful of top and most important signings, it just makes everybody else a little bit better.
For anyone out there who's trying to picture this all in your head, we have our depth charts fully updated. So coming off the back of the last transfer window, the people who help us out with that do an awesome job, and they've cleaned everything up. So you can go in and you can take a look at that. And if you do not, you can subscribe to our Patreon. It gets you access to that as well. So you can take a look at the length of the deals that they have, the depth charts, the way we have them set up, the potential to move pieces or not move pieces going forward. For the most part, this is a team with kind of middle spending, which sometimes is easier to get out of, and sometimes is a lot harder because you've got like a decent chunk of players on between $500,000 and $800,000, and all of them are on 2-year deals or 3-year deals. And if you can get off a couple, great, but it still doesn't do a ton of work for you. And that's where DC sits, and they sit with a decent chunk of players that are less exciting. Okay, let's dig into the U.S. men's national team here. Let's get a little bit happier and more excited. I will throw out, there are 4 MLS games this weekend in an international break. Houston hosting the Galaxy. Chicago plays New England. St. Louis hosts DC United. And SKC hosts Austin FC in the Sunday night soccer game. I will tell you this. I got vibes from the Leagues Cup final. I am hyped about Open Cup semifinal. It's going to be hard for me to get up for any of these games for the next 10 days before that.
DC St. Louis in an international window doesn't do it for you?
Like, get me meaningful games and get me out of here pretty soon. Let's talk USMNT. Since we all did our last set of shows, which was the Kickback Committee Soccer-Wise crossover on Tuesday, with Jill Sakovitz, Matt Doyle, you, and Susanna Fuller, which was awesome to listen to. You can listen to it on both of our channels. If you don't already, subscribe to the Kickback Committee podcast feed. Putting out a show at least once a week. We've got our live happy hour coming up in a few moments as well with some of the crew. Claudia Pagan will be there, you and me hanging out. But since then, Christian Roldan has been added to the roster. I think Mauricio Pochettino listens to our show. It was a long conversation that you all had about whether or not he deserved to be and how well he's played and how much he has done to push his way into it. Florian Balogun as well has been added to the roster since the initial roster was dropped for the USMNT. So 2 big additions to the team. On Roldan, you know, I'm a sucker. Like, I'm already a mark for Christian Roldan vibes. I have said a million times in every direction. I said it around the 2022 World Cup. I said it in 2019. I said it in 2017. He's a gamer. Like, my joke is always he could play center field or he could play tight end or running back for a team. Like, he's a great athlete. He's a gamer. He cares. He makes plays happen because of like pure will sometimes. Even when you look at the first goal in the Leagues Cup final, like, it's not fully conventional, right? He shifts the man in front of him, taking sort of a long touch to the side, but he's putting himself in spaces constantly. And then he's able to slip the first pass through the lines. That opens up the game. Now they find Alex Roldan out to the right. The second goal, he immediately picks up the ball. Like, it's just shit like that where he's like, I'm not taking this PK, but I'm going to pick up the ball so that everyone comes to me and takes a little bit of pressure off. Turns out to be his brother, but like, he's the guy who does all of those little things. It's a team in the national team that has felt like has no one like that. And so even if it's just trying to impact the group from training and the bench and whatever it is, I think we're all happy to see him there. I wouldn't be against seeing him on the field. Like, it's been 2+ years since he's legitimately played with the national team. He has become the center of a Seattle Sounders team that competes. And he plays centrally, and he plays a ton of minutes, and the responsibility's on his shoulders. So I wouldn't be sad to see him. I am sure that there are a lot of people on the internet who don't agree with me. But either way, cool to see him honored to get called up. Like, cool to see that what he's doing matters, and he gets the opportunity.
Well deserved. And listen, like, whether or not he plays minutes at the World Cup, let alone makes a World Cup squad, let alone is called up in October. Like, these recognitions of just a really good player and a really good dude, you can't take it away, man. And again, in the grand scheme of things, whether or not it makes a difference on whether the United States gets grouped at the World Cup or if they get to the semifinals, like, it's not always about that. And sometimes you need to find the beauty in, like, and again, this isn't dismissive anyway. This isn't just a participation call up and like, congratulations on your call up. Like, I think he can push towards the World Cup squad. Let's see if he does. But like, at some points, like, you need to step aside and say that, like, yeah, a really good player is getting rewarded for really good form. And those things are good.
Yep. And I think that's the process you want for a national team of, like, players being able to see I mean, it's hard to say now as Pochettino's like, okay, we're done seeing players. Like, it ends now. But you want players to believe they have an opportunity and that they can get in. He knows a lot of these players, right? He was at the 2022 World Cup. Like, he knows this group. And I just think having more people like him. Balogun on the other side, by the way, back-to-back starts, full 90s, got the goal against Strasbourg. It's the big position. Like, you know, we're going to do the three things we want to see. I'll start. The first one for me is Josh Sargent getting the start at center forward. I would like to see him get it in both games. I think he is that much better than everyone else, and it should be his spot.
Even Balogun, yeah?
I think so, yes. But that would be that exception, which I would be okay with, which is you're trying to lean into the belief that Balogun has a higher ceiling and when healthy and playing can reach that. I'm fine with Sargent getting the starts and Balogun being in the group, and then if he plays well enough with the club that he gets brought back to the next camp, and that's where he gets his first start. I'm fine saying Josh Sargent has earned it, and if he plays well enough in the first game, like, I don't need those minutes pre-allocated away from him to say Balogun has to see them, but at a minimum, Josh Sargent needs to be starting against South Korea on Saturday.
Interesting. So I can be convinced on your side, or like I'm content with this. My view on this one was I wanted, again, if it was a split between Balogun and Sargent, I think that it would be fair and good. I would want it to make sure that both of these forwards get to play with Pulisic and Weah, or some combination of, like, rather than, hey, Balogun plays with, air quote, the Pulisic, the Weahs, the guys who we're expecting to play key roles. Adams is playing. And then in the next game, it's
Zendejas.
Yeah, right. Like, whatever. I don't want to be disrespectful with any of the players, right? But, like,
let's do it. Let's get messy.
Tyler Adams, Pulisic are starting at the World Cup if they're fit. Like, that's it. Richards, those three players, right? I want the forwards, and again, the center back, not a huge impact here on the center forward and the relationships there. But my point is, I want them both to get starts with as many first choice-ish players as possible, rather than we have one starting group and then we have another starting group. And then it goes back to your Zendejas point that you've made over the years that is really good. It's just like, then he's asked to play the Pulisic role, when, you know what, he'd be much better playing opposite Pulisic rather than in place of him.
Yeah. What's your first thing?
Yeah, so we'll just stick with Roldan. And again, I don't know the likelihood of this, and I'll give Doyle credit for this. I would love to see him playing in the midfield with Tyler Adams. Like, I think that Roldan's intelligence, motor, and elasticity to do multiple different things in the same game and knowing when to do them frees up Adams to be a pressing eight. Frees up, like I just think that duo has a lot of potential. And we've seen Adams with Berhalter. And like, I would like to see Roldan get a meaningful run, though it would be a little weird to go from not called into the team to starting the first game. And like,
but it wouldn't be outside the realm of USMNT over the last 5 years.
No.
And Pochettino's reign so far, and like everything that's happened.
No, and so and I'll piggyback this one and just like I want to see Noah Kai Banks get some run and get some meaningful run, if that's a start, if that's at least 45 minutes off the bench in one game with either Richards or Ream. Like, I think that'd be good, because I want to see what he looks like at this level.
Yeah, I have said this a couple times. You know what you're getting from Tim Ream, and I think Chris Richards has elevated his game so reliably that you know what you're getting from him, and he doesn't need a million reps so that his relationship with Ream is perfected so that he can cover his flaws. Therefore, I think there are minutes to allocate at the center back position to other players if you think they can actually change your reality going forward and give them opportunities alongside Chris Richards. And if you deem that that's Noah Kai Banks, then give him the chance and like let him start a game and let him play alongside him. I find it hard to believe. I genuinely find it hard to believe it's Tristan Blackman. And so I don't know that he's going to get those minutes. And I would say probably if you can get Banks to start and Ream to start and Richards starts both games, then like that's probably the setup that I would like to see in that center back pairing. I will say from a style point of view, I think this is a South Korea team that plays a little disconnected, and they like to sit in, from what I've watched, they like to sit in and try and build out a little bit, but their front line stays very high, and they don't send a ton of numbers to support them. And there's two ways you could handle that. You could choose to step off the ball and say, well, try and be more aggressive and beat us. I would love for that not to be the case. I would love for the U.S. to take the game on the front foot, press their front line high, try and create turnovers. Let Tyler Adams be a difference maker for you by leading pressure out of midfield and try and create chances quicker in transition. So that's my number 2 thing, is purely the style that they play with. Honestly, if you lose one of these games, like, yeah, it'll be a bit of a mess because you shouldn't lose at home. But I'd rather go out and feel like, okay, they're at least being the aggressor in these games. And I think doing so at Red Bull Arena, although I don't know what that crowd's going to look like, because Patterson, New Jersey, I think now is one of the, by the way, if anyone's in the area, there is a great Korean spa right near the GW Bridge. I cannot remember the name right now, but I will look it up and I will shout it out on another thing. I typed in Korean spa to Google and I got all ones in Miami.
There's like Craigslist.
There's like this place right north of the GW Bridge that has like 45 pools and views of the city and all the different styles.
Sojo Spa?
I don't know. Maybe I can't remember the name right now, or the name maybe always changes. But yeah, I don't know what the crowd will look like is my point. But Red Bull Arena will be hopping for this game. Like, take advantage of that. Play that way, and that's my number 2 thing.
Yeah, that was not too dissimilar to what my second was going to be. In that, I hope that that we can see identifiable progress / like just, hey, what are we trying to do here? What is the idea? And hopefully it's something on the front foot or in transition, or just high energy, right? Because I think that, again, anytime you have Adams on the field, he's a pressing monster. He's somebody who can cover ground. Like, use that as best you can. Chris Richards is very, very comfortable in space. Tim Ream holds up in space for his age a little bit deceptively. So, again, Weah, Pulisic, when they're in transition, is when they're really, really dangerous. So, I hope that we see that kind of game. And that's kind of, again, your points, I think, were all better. So, I'm not going to elaborate too much. And I'll just go to my third.
King Spa in New Jersey. That is the name. You are welcome.
That sounds like it's a good spot.
It is
like
Palisades Park, technically, right outside of Fort Lee.
Cool. Yeah, that's a bit of a hike.
Stop on your next drive past the midday spa session
from Connecticut. Can I take a nap there?
Yeah. Yes, you can.
So my third one is just an overarching, and like, I'll preface it with, yeah, dude, it's a friendly at the end of the day. Who cares? But like, my God, I'm just so sick of this team losing. They lost 4 games in a row before the Gold Cup. They needed the penalties to beat Costa Rica. They holding on for dear life against Guatemala, who were the story of the tournament, and then after a fun 10, 15 minutes, holding on for dear life for the next 75 against Mexico. So, at some point, man, like, results matter. Even in a friendly, just go out, play well, get a win, score a few goals. Like, again, you can hear the excitement in my voice. It's just, it's a bad, program's in a bad spot in terms of performance, in terms of vibes, in terms of whatever you want to put in there, whatever metric it is, it's probably not good. And hey, there's still hope for the 2026 World Cup. At some point, some meaningful wins need to come. And again, against South Korea and Japan, like, these are 2 good teams, man. 2 really good teams on the international. These are teams, I think, that the U.S. national team, they should be in this tier. They have not been in this tier since the 2022 World Cup. They should be in this tier. So going out and beating one of these teams, I think, would be a big help. They
did lose
momentum.
to Japan in the run-up to the 2022 World Cup
again,
in Europe, so maybe they haven't been in this tier before then. But yeah,
fair enough. But
I fully agree with you. I like the setup of these friendlies. Like, I think this is a good setup. 2 qualified teams, 2 teams that will have some fan base, 2 teams that understand this level and can challenge you and prepare you for the World Cup. I will say, hearing South Korea and Japan, I keep having 2002 flashbacks, which was epic, like, time in my life of FIFA and watching the World Cup and all of that, and the Nike with the circle jersey and whatnot. And so that's thrown some good flashbacks into my life. My final one is you talked about relationships and guys getting chances with big guys. I want to see Diego Luna on the field with the big stars. I want to see Luna on the field with Weah, with Pulisic, with Sargent. Whatever combination of that, I want to see him as a piece of that and how he links up with those players and how he can change the game with those guys on the field. So that's the third thing for me. And, like, it seems like pretty clearly I've set my starting lineup for that opening game. But, like, that's, to me, crucial because I think he's good enough to be a part of that 11. And I think he can be a real factor, especially if the whole game doesn't rely on his shoulders like it did at times during Gold Cup. And so that's my third one. Tom, I think you did 3 already?
Yeah, because we had similar second ones. Yeah. So that's why I quickly
look at us. Third. Last thing to note before we get out of here it is obviously our 50 states of soccer. We've done New Jersey. You dug in pretty heavy on Tuesday to your native state. Me and Jordan went through just the gauntlet of women's national team players that have come out of New Jersey. We will tie the bow on it in our live happy hour, which will go up on the Kickback Committee feed as well. But I do want to mention in this that the U.S. is honoring Michael Bradley before the game at, I will say what Tyler Adams said, which is it's Red Bull Arena. It's Mama named it Red Bull Arena. It's named Red Bull Arena. No Sports Illustrated there. Third most cap player in USMNT history with 151 international appearances, including 48, which he was captain for. He is, in my mind, unequivocally one of the best soccer players in U.S. history, one of the best USMNT players in history. He has moments at the Azteca, against Mexico in qualifying in Columbus, against Slovenia. He has these moments that are untouched. And he was one of the few players that you could put up against anyone else in the world. My story, which I may have told already, went deep into the Amazon ahead of the Portugal game at the 2014 World Cup with a bunch of random people from random countries, including an English family. And then when we went into Manaus to the game, I ran into them at halftime while we were all moving seats, deciding we had to like change the juju. And the dad was like, Pirlo's my favorite player in the world. Michael Bradley is like Pirlo. And I was like, okay, you're doing a lot here, but respect. And I love that. And he was one of those players. Like we've talked about Eddie Pope being one of the first on that level, DeMarcus Beasley being one of the first on that level. Obviously, a lot of the goalkeepers, the Brad Friedels, the Tony Miolas of the world were there. Michael Bradley was one of those, right? He could play in the Premier League. He could play in the Bundesliga. He could play in Serie A. The way he played the game at such a high level and understanding of the game. And then he did special things coming back to MLS when he did. And like, if you were ever around TFC in the time he was there, it was awesome to watch. He carried that club from the basement to one of the model clubs, to one of the great sporting teams in Toronto history. And now he's doing it as a coach with New York Red Bulls too, but really cool to see him honored, and just one of the greats all over.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite players growing up. He embodied what I think we all loved about the national team in that era. Like, obviously, Dempsey and Donovan were the two forward-based stars. He was a constant. He's, like, I think Tyler Adams is a special player. Like, Bradley, like, if Adams ends up accomplishing what Bradley did, like, that will be a great career. Like, I'm not sure. Like, that's been a little bit of a debate just because the last taste in your mouth for Bradley with the national team was they missed the 2018 World Cup. And, like, that's a stain, but like that doesn't overshadow not just his highs, but like the consistency for a decade from like whatever 07 until 17 in that fateful night in Cuba. And again, he's part of it, but like, I wouldn't put it all on him. I don't think that he was the sole problem or anything. But like you think of the goal at the Azteca, just his performances at the 2010 and 2014 World Cups, like the Confederation Cup, like how important he was to all of these teams and how consistent he was, the leader, everything else. Like Michael Bradley is one of the very, very best players in this federation's history. And it is really cool that he's getting honored. It's nice that it's at Red Bull Arena, that it's in New Jersey. It's fitting. And again, like we don't always recognize our history that well. It's like, hey, because we didn't start in 1875 with a leather ball, that it's like, oh, there's no, like, I love that he's getting honored. He should be getting honored. There are, I think the national team does this better than MLS. Like there's more history there as well. But like the more and more that you can recognize your legends and elevate them, like that's what he is. And I think that it's going to be a very cool scene Saturday, and I'm looking forward to being there for it.
It is your own, honoring your own there. New Jersey for Tommy Scoops. So big congrats to Michael Bradley and, Morgan in the chat saying never understood the disrespect. Yeah, coming out of 2018, 2017 World Cup qualifying, it was really tough. I think for a lot of people, their reaction to him, I think he absorbed a lot of blame that wasn't necessarily to him. Remember, by the way, he played as a 10 for Jurgen Klinsmann because Klinsmann couldn't figure out an actual formation that fit the players. And that's not his role. And he did it as well as anyone could in that setting. We talked about the big goals he scored, the big moments he was a part of as a young player, breaking into the team at a time when there were sort of question marks coming out of 06 of like, what's the future of this team and who's the future? And I think from a pure soccer player point of view, technique, touch, vision, soccer IQ, maybe no one else is equal to him in the USMNT's history and the USMNT pool. And he deserves to be honored for that. So it's going to be a pretty cool event as well. So we will be back next week. We will have reaction show in between the two friendlies for you around the USMNT and Canadian men's national team as they prepare to play Romania tomorrow in their first game, and then Wales in the second game. Then we will get you all prepped for the weekend to come in Major League Soccer coming out of that. And then we will be talking about the US Open Cup, as I mentioned as well, which is going to be the semifinals coming up in 2 weeks. So a lot to talk about, a lot to do. Don't forget to subscribe to Kickback Committee. We've got a couple of newsletters that are coming out as well, a World Cup-based one and a more North American soccer-based one. And we appreciate all of you for being here live, everyone for listening. Rate and review us wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. And we'll talk to you again very, very soon.